discussion about the future energy workforce. I guess this is a framing piece for the rest of the sessions that will flow on through the Ignited piece of work that's currently going on at the moment. But again, really pleased you could all join us. And if you do have any questions, thoughts you want to add, examples or anything like that, please do drop them in the chat or into the Q&A. We're really keen to not only, I guess, pass some information on from our side, but also to hear from you and to share and learn from some of your experiences as well. So before we start, I would like to acknowledge the lands on which we meet today. I'm on Kaurna country in South Australia, but I know we have people from right across Australia. I'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the country, their connections to land, sea and community, and pay our respects to elders past, present, and extend that respect to any Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islander people who might be on the call today. Feel very privileged to be on some beautiful country right across Australia. So before we begin, I guess a little bit of housekeeping. So with the design of this session, you are all on mute and your cameras are off. That's the way this session or the format of this works. If you do have questions, like I said before, we'd love to see them and to hear from you within the Q&A box or within the meeting chat. We are recording, so if you want to watch this later, if you want to share it, please do so. And a reminder there, if you would like to put captions on, there is an option for that up in the top corner, I believe, which can just help with some of the content. But without further ado, let's have a look at beautiful. Thanks, Greg, from Canberra, Ngunnawal country. So what we're going to cover today, so really today is a scene setter for that broader conversation about how Australia's clean energy transition is reshaping the skills, those roles and the capabilities that we really need across the energy sector. We're going to talk through those workforce challenges and what's changing within the sector. We're going to talk about some of those system pressure points, and then we're going to have a bit of time for some of that open discussion through the chat and through the Q&A. I guess a reminder that this is it's the second session. Anthea officially opened the Ignited series earlier this morning, but this is the second session in a really great schedule that the Vet Blueprint team has put together. Future sessions that are coming up over the next couple of weeks are around building partnerships, preparing for the changing sector, AI as a teaching partner, building capacity, learning culture. There are some really interesting discussions taking place, some podcasts, a whole range of different formats going on. So this is really here just to, I guess, frame that overall change that we're seeing in the state of the industry at the moment. But I really do encourage you, if you haven't looked at the full schedule, have a bit of a look. There's some really great content that's going to be going on. So for those who haven't met me, I know I've probably met a lot of people who might be online for this session. But for those who haven't met me before, my name is Peter Adams. I'm the Director of Research and Policy at Powering Skills Organisation. And you can see there that I lead the research, workforce planning and policy teams within PSO. Really, we put together a lot of the data. We work with the engagement team to really bring the voice of industry into the work that we do and to highlight those opportunities, those areas of change and the challenges that the industry faces, and to try to give them scale and to try to give them that the wealth of information that all of you bring to a lot of the conversations to really help guide government in the action that needs to be taken to help address some of these pervasive workforce issues that we're facing. You can see there, for anyone who's not aware of the Jobs and Skills Council model, we are the National Jobs and Skills Council for Energy, Gas and Renewables. We have 4 training packages under our remit. The training package for electrotechnology, which covers roles like electricians and air conditioning, refrigeration mechanics and instrumentation. We also cover the training packages for transmission of energy, for distribution of energy, for generation of energy, and also the transmission of gas. So there's a huge range of occupations which sit below those that we try to inform, as well as trying to be stewards for industry and trying to really provide that intelligence on workforce planning and the workforce needs of Australia more broadly. So a little about the Ignited before we jump into the content proper. Um, so Ignited is a part of three pieces of work that PSO is currently undertaking that all wraps up into the VET Blueprint project that PSO have been working on for, I believe, a couple of years now. So the research throughout the VET Blueprint more broadly has focused on mapping the sector, identifying pain points and trialing solutions that enable us to gear the sector to implement the changes required, particularly within that VET system and the VET workforce.
Actually, to go for a wander. I'm gonna leave this.
Oh, sorry, we've just got. Okay, sorry, we just had. Yep, all good. So within that, we've got three pieces of work that we're working on at the moment. So we've got Ignited, which is this national showcase for the VET Blueprint project, and really takes a lot of the learnings that have been derived from this research and from this project and stacks them into a showcase of innovation so that we can hopefully build some momentum for sector-wide improvement. There's Partnered, which is focused on strengthening collaboration across the energy industry and the VET sector, which has been identified as critically important into resolving some of these issues. And through Partnered, we're developing a framework, implementation guides and toolkits that will support shared delivery models, co-investment approaches, and stronger accountability mechanisms. So, critically important for the industry and certainly a really hot topic throughout the discussions that we've been having out within industry and within the training sector. And then we've got Elevated, which is really focusing on strengthening the capability and career progression and the long-term sustainability of the energy sector educator workforce. So really making sure that we provide a structured approach to professional development, helping educators to build capability across areas such as industry currency and teaching practice, assessment, digital capability and leadership. And we'll talk about some of those in the session today. At the same time, it really creates opportunities for collaboration, innovation, and the sharing of good practices across the sector. There's so much great work going on at the moment that serves as a prime platform to share those learnings and those lived experience of our educators. So without further ado, we're going to dive into now the workforce challenges as they currently stand, and I guess the state of the sector and the needs. So, I guess the net zero transition, including the shift to electrification more broadly, is amongst the largest changes to both the local and global economy since the Industrial Revolution. It's really reshaping how we generate, distribute, store, and how we use electricity and energy. And it's only compounded by the rise of automation and smart homes, AI, integrated microgrids like residential solar and battery systems. It's quickly broadening on a daily basis, EV infrastructure. And those changes are profoundly reshaping the very fabric of our workforce, the people, the skills, the trades who will deliver that transition for us. It won't be an easy task. There are challenges, but what lies before us is not really a problem to be managed, but more of a once-in-a-generation opportunity. We've got the opportunity to turn this global movement into a really strong sovereign competitive advantage and to significantly change the lives of Australians and how Australians, again, interact with energy and how they use it and how it contributes to their quality of life. We've got a huge uptick in energy output driven by increased energy demand, which I'm going to talk about in a minute. But really what we're seeing is all of the factors are compounding in a requirement to triple the energy output generated between now and 2050. Triple, and that to meet that surging demand, and that still doesn't really, I guess, take into account some of the growth that we're seeing in areas like data centers, which are likely to significantly increase that demand. Not only that, but interspersed across these, there'll be themes of increasing system connectivity that's going to be needed. Energy efficiency is certainly going to become a much more strong area of focus as we try to mitigate some of that demand that's required. And all of it contributes to an overall volume of work that's quickly coming over the horizon. Not to mention, the vast storage needs and rise of renewable dispatchable power through residential and large scale BESS, which we're seeing absolutely blow the lights out at the moment. It's a huge volume of work and growth in that area currently. When we look at investment in major energy projects as well, we can see that really reflecting that demand, which is going to need to be met. So when we look at, energy project investment back in, let's say, 2016, we're looking at about a $4 billion investment. That's grown to over 25 billion in late 2024, and is certainly continuing to grow as times go on. All of these factors really contribute to that opportunity ahead. The opportunity that we don't want to miss out on, we don't want to squander it, but to enable all of those factors to meet that demand, we must have the skilled workforce that we need. And it needs to be the right sized workforce with the right skills in the right place at the right time. And as we all know, that is incredibly complicated and a tricky task for us to meet. So let's take a bit of a look at the core of that workforce. Now, we've got some information here that comes from a range of sources, but gives you a bit of a snapshot into what that workforce looks like nationally at the moment. We can see there 201,000 electricians, around 36,000 air conditioning and refrigeration mechanics, 12,000 electrical distribution and transmission trade workers, 11,000 electrical engineering draftspeople and technicians, 32,000 electronic trades workers, and almost 34,000 electrical engineers. Now, PSO tends to focus on those 6 critical occupations. They make up around 57% of the overall energy workforce, and the remaining percentage tends to be a range of other roles, surrounding project management, administration, leadership. So, these are the ones that we critically look at as having those energy related skills needed to really drive the sort of growth that we need. And within that, the electrician makes up a staggering 42% of the energy workforce. So if you see that we have a really strong focus on electricians through a lot of the work that PSO do, that's essentially why they make up 42% of the energy sector workforce. So a truly staggering amount. We can see there we're really performing really well in some areas like median weekly earnings. The sector's particularly strong. We can see there that we're unfortunately underperforming in terms of diversity. And we can also see that, there are some really strong trends in terms of where our overseas workforce come from, or those leading countries of birth for our workforce that is born in overseas. But the real kicker of that, if we look across those occupations, they're needed across a wide range of sectors. They're really needed across the economy. So we have those significant targets, growth and adoption across all of these areas. We have industrial and mining, which has a critical need for some of those energy skilled workers. We have domestic electrification and retrofit, which is going on, which is pulling a core range of workers. We have electric vehicle infrastructure, both large and heavy, both small commercial and heavy vehicles as well that will require significant infrastructure as the electric vehicles further grow in the market. Renewables and storage obviously go without saying. You know, we know we have some, we talked about the energy demand before that those renewables and storage will need to meet, and some significant challenges there with making sure that we have the workforce to meet those demands. Construction, we've got the National Housing Accord, which is going to put a significant volume of need of especially electricians and refrigeration and HVAC workers are going to be required throughout the construction sector and housing. And we've got the growing tide of data centers, which again pull that same workforce and also add to the significant scale of demand for energy. So we have that same core workforce that's really spread across all of these different sectors, and trying to prioritize and trying to ensure that we have the skills across all of those different areas, those contextualized niche specializations, is going to become increasingly important to make sure that we can fulfill all of those disparate needs. In the good news, the workforce is growing. We're continuing to see some great sustained growth across most of those critical occupations. However, that growth is unlikely to meet the previously forecasted demand. So, the historic modelling that we're currently using shows a likely undershoot of about 42,000 electricians by 2030 alone. And that's not a small number when you consider that we've only got, a little over 200,000 at the moment. And that modelling doesn't account for some of those drivers that I was just talking about, like the emerging data centres and the National Housing Accord, which are going to drive that further demand. If we look at where that workforce sits, across the jurisdictions, up to about 96% of energy sector businesses are small businesses. So they're employing fewer than 20 people, and which really highlights, I guess, that changing economy is likely to really impact those small businesses in a significant manner. So we need to make sure that we are supporting that really strong growth area and the core of the energy sector, as it would be. Those small businesses are employing the majority of our apprentices in the sector, in some areas up to around 65%, and medium businesses taking on another 20 to 27%. So again, we can see there that apprentices remain our primary opportunity for growing that skilled energy workforce. And, to enable that, we must make sure that we support small businesses to keep employing and to grow the volume of apprentices that they're employing. So we know we need more workers, but let's also look at how we're utilising that workforce at the moment, and how generally how we're performing in terms of skills and productivity. So the graph on the left is from the Productivity Commission, and it reflects what's been driving a really strong national conversation around productivity, and it really shows that over the last 60 years, productivity has been on a really steady decline. We can also see from the graph on the right that we have a significant skill shortage that is feeding this, and those two are really closely linked. When you think about a workforce who is under significant pressure, who has a significant backlog of work, we start to think about increased sick days, less focus potentially on things like safety, resulting in more workplace incidents. We tend to see workers travelling further distances between jobs and things like that, because there aren't the localised workforce required. And so all of those things can impact on productivity and really link productivity and skill shortages really closely. And what that means for our sector is, unfortunately, we tend to sit at the one of the lowest points of productivity across any sector. So particularly utilities is sitting in negative productivity growth, and we sit at the highest end of skill shortages. So we are at the real pointy end of both of those areas. I think what it does show, though, is a great opportunity, because noting how critically linked skill shortages and productivity are, we have the opportunity to alleviate those skill shortages by addressing productivity gains, and equally lifting productivity can ease those skills shortages. What really comes across clearly is that a more skilled workforce is a more productive workforce. And we aren't only talking about technical skills there, but also soft skills. So, things like leadership and growing the supervisory skills of those managers in the workplace who might be employing and supervising apprentices can have a really big impact on the productivity of the workers who sit within who sit under those managers. Equally to, introducing new technology which might require training and would require upskilling can really increase those productivity gains. Even things like scheduling, training in scheduling and time management can really significantly increase productivity. So, skills are a critical lever to making sure that our workforce is more productive, and a more productive workforce will ease the skill shortages. And at the same time, growing the workforce and addressing some of those skill shortages will also make our workforce more productive. So it really is a closed loop system, and one that we have the opportunity to exert some significant work on, but really to harness the opportunity associated with those. But if we look at how those skills are changing, that also tells a really interesting story. So we can see on the left here, we've got a graph that shows how global project values have been changing in the energy sector over time from 2015 to 2026. We can see there, unsurprisingly, in 2015, we had oil and natural gas really at the top of the project value chain globally. Renewables coming in third, which was great. Grids, efficiency, coal, electrification, right down the list. And certainly when we look at 2015, nothing on energy storage at all. Whereas if we look at over how that's changed through to 2026, we can see renewables rise right to the top of the list, and unsurprisingly supported by the investment in grids that will connect those renewable systems. We can see oil and natural gas still certainly taking an important role there, but look how far electrification's come as well. And then we can see again, probably in the bottom order of that, we can see the growth in storage coming from not even visible to, quite a substantial size. And we know that Australia is certainly leading some of the market in that space. Melissa, I believe that's both private and government investment. I would need to check that, but the source is there. It comes from the International Energy Agency. So yeah, I'll try to find you some information on that. Locally, the story is really consistent. So we can see the graph on the right there comes from the draft ISP from AEMO, the draft 2026 ISP, I should say, and really shows how the mix of energy generation is likely to change over time. So we can see there the transition from 2009 through till what's projected in 2050, and we can see there, the real rise in rooftop and other small-scale solar, utility solar, offshore and onshore wind, and certainly storage as well. So those skills that are required, that understanding of these technologies, that has grown from, in the last 16, 17 years from not even being, I guess, on our radar to now being and projected to be such a significant part of the knowledge that's going to be required for our workforce, and significant part of the technologies that they'll be working on a daily basis. It probably brings us to this quote, which came through the Vet Workforce Project, um, and that's, "I'm going to be an electrician, but okay, I know what an electrician is. I know what it does. That's it. If I'm going to do any of the clean energy roles, or any of the other roles that might be available that we've sort of talked through briefly, what am I doing? What am I working as?" And it remains a really strong area for confusion. Um, and I guess there's benefit in defining those pathways and that range of job roles and opportunities available that are coming with these new technologies. Um, but it's also worth noting, I guess, that the core of what an electrician is, and the understanding of the way energy works, will remain consistent across all of these roles. And this is how we started to conceptualize that. So when we look at, that, 2009 or before, we saw that the really strong core around traditional electrical trade skills. We know that over time, as these new technologies have penetrated the market, and as the workforce has needed to adapt and adopt these new skills, that they've had to bring them in and significantly grow that sphere of knowledge outside of those traditional electrical trade skills and those core skills. Um, we can see some of them there, which we're going to go into briefly, which we're going to go into on the next slide. But that overall knowledge and the opportunity for contextualization and specialization is growing at an incredibly rapid rate, and something that we need to be really mindful in addressing, to make sure that we have these workers who are going to be able to work on either the wide range of projects or are going to have the specialized knowledge to service some of those niche sectors which are growing at a rapid pace. And this is what that looks like when we start to drill down on it a bit. So we can see there around the outside, we've got the technologies that will be coming online for the sector, or are already online, or already in the mix for the sector. All of these will be coming on in various, I guess, in various volumes. We know that, hydrogen, if we look at 2, 3, 4 years ago, it was going to be a huge part of the market. It'll still certainly be a part of the market, but likely in a much smaller volume, and likely much more geographically focused, or geographically dense. Um, and certainly might come back to the fore in the years ahead, depending on likely market viability and sort of global need. Um, but we can see, pumped hydro storage, microgrids, the circular economy, and waste to energy, biogas particularly, smart grids, virtual power plants. Um, all of these are going to be areas of knowledge, and within those capabilities, within those areas of technology and knowledge that the workforce is going to need, they're going to have to grow those capabilities around, how these systems interact with each other, how they integrate, and how those systems talk to each other, that connectivity. They're going to have to understand how to work on those systems safely and in a compliant manner. Huge if we look at some of the recent battery installation reports that are going on, and some of the compliance concerns around some of those new installations. When you look at it, a lot of it boils down to labeling and safety warnings and things like that. But again, I guess leading into productivity, we must make sure that we're working in a safe and compliant manner, and that the work we're doing is of a quality that doesn't need to be redone. Automation and control, hugely growing area. Cybersecurity, again, a critical area of capability that's going to be needed across those technologies. And then, at the center of that, we need the capable vet workforce who's going to have the knowledge across these technologies and across those capabilities to pass on to the future generation of workers that are coming through. So, but there is a bit of a missing link in this. And that's, so we know we need to significantly grow the workforce. We know that we need to significantly grow the skills that they have. But we also know, and this is, I guess, an area of great concern for PSO, that the electrical trades have among the lowest rates of upskilling across the trades and across the sectors. So we know that we have this huge need for that growth in knowledge, that growth in skills, but at the same time, we know that that's just not happening, and we need to grow that lifelong learning culture among the industry. And not surprisingly, we know that small businesses have among the lowest training rates. The old adage that it's hard to take time to work on the business when you're working in the business. For a lot of those small businesses who might have, one or two or three tradespeople or a tradesperson and an apprentice, taking time out to undertake training and to learn and to grow your knowledge in those new skills areas can be really tricky. We know that that gets even worse for businesses that might be located in regional areas and might not have access to localized training opportunities. We know that it comes at financial cost, as well as the time out of the business. So, all of these challenges significantly are much higher for small business. And so, while it's not, I guess, surprising to see that upskilling rates are particularly low, it needs to remain a really strong area of focus and an area that needs to be addressed for the sector to, again, make sure that workforce is more highly skilled, which will lead to those productivity gains, which will help to alleviate skills shortage, while at the same time contributing to that overall growth in workforce that we need. So all of these are critically linked. So we've talked really heavily about, I guess, electrical roles to date, but there are some emerging roles which are quickly coming down the pipeline as well. So we see systems engineers and systems designers as a really critical role, which is emerging in the market. We are seeing as the range of systems and, particularly around data centers, and a lot of the large scale infrastructure builds, how the systems are designed and the ongoing design needs around them are certainly growing at a rapid pace. So too, how those systems integrate across the grid and how they interact with other systems. So even at the residential level, how your solar panels are interacting with your battery, or how they're interacting with home energy management systems, and a range of other, likely internet connected appliances and automation devices that might be in the home. All of these, critical areas that need to be integrated and that our workforce is going to need to understand. So to, upgrade, retrofit advisors and coordinators. So we have a huge volume of existing homes that people would like to upgrade, would like to retrofit with a lot of the new technologies that are coming out, and knowing what is going to be suitable and what is going to best fit the homeowners or the residents' needs, and what's going to work best for what that person is trying to achieve, is going to be critical. And part of that might fit within some of the existing roles, like electricians and like your refrigeration and air conditioning technicians. But there's likely to be those disparate roles emerging as well. A really great question here from David that I might just address before we go on to some other the remaining content. So David's asked, given the electrical trades have the greatest need for upskilling, what are the implications for the dual mechanic electrical certification issue in the future, particularly given this dual skill set is recognised in other countries with whom we may be competing for skilled workers? Yeah, David, you're absolutely correct. You know, that's really emerging as a really critical dynamic, which is needed across across a lot of the subsectors that we're talking about today. We certainly see it among um, on and offshore wind. That dynamic between mechanical and electrical is a really strongly valued um, skills need for the workers. And likewise, we're seeing it within the refrigeration and air conditioning space for data centers, those mechanical skills and the fabrication side of things really strongly needed as well. So I think there is a strong awareness of the dynamic needed between those. There is obviously some critical some critical challenges that need to be addressed in trying to make sure um, that we support, I guess, the existing license system, and that we don't dilute, and that we have safe outcomes as a result of, you know, any dual skilling that we might undertake. But you're absolutely right. It's a critical area of need that's emerging at the moment. So I guess I've hopefully painted the picture of a wonderful opportunity ahead of us, but some pretty critical challenges as well. And key among those is the vet workforce and the educators who are going to be at the forefront of passing on, you know, and training a lot of that future workforce and diffusing those skills across the economy. Um, So this first slide, we're really looking at, I guess, you know, what's the change for your vet educators specifically, and there's a range of factors that are going to come into play. Educator and trainer shortages, which certainly the case at the moment, putting increased pressure on the existing vet educator workforce that we have. A range of complex entry pathways. So the pathway through from trades into vet education is often quite opaque to a lot of people, and often doesn't really become a visible pathway until a significant life event, usually when people are looking to maybe scale down towards retirement, or if they might have had a workplace injury, which sort of, you know, triggers that look at what other roles might be available. Um, and that really strong need for us to attract industry professionals into teaching. Um, Digital AI and emerging skills, we know that not only does the vet educator workforce need to grow their knowledge and their adoption of AI in the work that they're doing and those that emerging digital environment, um, but also, you know, the ability to pass those skills on and that knowledge on to the students, and to make sure that students are utilizing, you know, some of the benefits of AI. When we go back to that productivity issue that we talked about earlier, you know, there are some really key aspects around those digital skills which can help to, again, offset some of that productivity decline that we're seeing. Um, we know that keeping currency and real world experience is an ongoing challenge for the vet sector workforce. We know that, you know, I guess as we spoke about with the energy workforce being in such shortage, that it's hard to take that time to go out and to grow those skills and to undertake training. So too is it equally difficult for the vet workforce to take time away from the classroom and to grow those real world skills. Yeah, really good point, Andrew. Um,
Sorry, Pete, I was just going to jump in because Andrew's put that comment in the chat. There's
mm,
also a question from David Moody in the question and answer saying, given that the electrical trades have the greatest need for upskilling, what are the implications for the dual mechanical electrical certification in the future, particularly given this dual skill set's recognised in other countries with whom we may be competing for skilled workers?
yeah, I had a bit of a chat about that before, Mel. I did spot that one. Thank you, though. Um, and certainly modernising future delivery models as well is going to be hugely important. We need industry-led and co-design delivery is going to be critically important going forward. We need the sharing of technologies and teaching and training aids, and those opportunities to really start to break out into where it's suitable to do so and where it's safe to do so. Hybrid, online, and simulation-based learning, which are critical areas that need to grow. This was another really great quote that came through the research that the Vet Blueprint team undertook, coming from a lighting technician. As if I were in charge, I would promote industry to TAFE cycles, encouraging tradespeople to teach temporarily and then return to the field. And this is something we've heard several times, and we had a great example of, I think it was a European country, potentially Germany, where there is a continuing cycle from industry out and into the vet sector and into that education space. With I guess I think it was a 3 to 6 year sort of cycle, creating both an in and an outflow, and it had some really great benefits in terms of keeping the currency of the educator space, and the passing on of those real-time skills and the real-time areas of expertise, but also in growing the capability and the educating and the supervisory capability and the support capabilities of industry as well. So those workers coming from the vet sector going back into industry, being significantly more capable in terms of that supervisory and passing on those skills in the workplace than they might have been without that experience. So some really great international models that we can see out there, and some really great initiatives that are going on, and we're going to give an example of a localized version of that in a minute. But certainly does highlight that there are those opportunities for systems change that could significantly impact how we skill our workforce, and the capability of those educators and the capability of our workforce more broadly. When we look at some of those systemic challenges, educator currency and capability, we talked about the program in Germany, which is certainly one systems way of approaching some of those issues that we're facing, but certainly a range of other opportunities as well, and even things like the programs that PSO are running at the moment within this series and within the partnered and the other program that we're running. Sorry, mind blank on that one. Great ways of growing that currency and that capability. Trainer shortages and retention. We know that recruitment is constrained by pay and workload. There's some of the most consistent bits of feedback we get as to why we're not seeing that volume of throughput into the vet educator workforce. So certainly some opportunities there to look at systems and policy approaches that might be able to resolve those. Regional delivery constraints, as we're starting to see a more dispersed grid, we are going to need delivery in a much broader range of locations. We had examples in a meeting, I believe it was yesterday, of some apprentices having to drive 6 to 10 hours to attend training, and the sort of barriers that raises in terms of, and the risk it raises to that worker are significant. And as we see the renewable energy zones growing, and as we see the range of grid work that needs to be done in regional areas, we're seeing a much bigger geographical dispersal of workforce that's going to be needed, and the delivery that needs to start to match that. Compliance capacity, compliance pressure. We have a really strong focus on compliance, as we should, but it is consuming capacity of the vet educators. How we support that, how we make sure that the compliance activity and the compliance work that is done is supporting quality education, but is also not over-regulating, is a really important aspect. And then capability gap beyond those technical skills. It's not about just those technical skills. We're seeing a really strong growing emergence of skills needed around, mentoring and mental health support and a range of those other areas which are really impacting the modern workforce and are skills that are much more needed in the modern day work environment. When we start to look at, I guess, the workforce that's falling on, similarly to the skill shortages we're seeing within the energy sector more broadly, we can really see that if we look at the vet workforce in that graph on the left there, now I will caveat this by saying that it is that's for all vet teachers, it's not just for our sector, but we can see there we haven't really seen growth or significant growth since as far back as the 1980s. So we're not significantly growing the volume of vet workforce. We know that, compliance has significantly lifted. We know that student numbers have significantly lifted, and yet we're not seeing that significant growth in the vet workforce to match. And we can see there on the right, PSO did a survey of a wide range of educators in the energy space, 79% reporting a moderate to severe shortage of electrical trainers within their workplace, within their RTO, and 77% reporting a shortage of some sort in terms of the electrotechnology infrastructure. So it's not only growth in the vet educator workforce we need to see, but also growth in that infrastructure. And I will say that that when we talk infrastructure there, we're talking both physical and digital. So we're not talking necessarily about brand new training facilities in each and every sort of regional centre, but certainly vastly growing the digital infrastructure that's supporting some of these students would bring significant benefit and help to break down some of that accessibility gap. So we're coming to the end of the session. I just want to highlight this case study from Holmesglen, which demonstrates how training providers can respond creatively to educator shortages while continuing to meet growing learner demand. So at the time, Holmesglen were experiencing increased apprentice numbers, and they really faced challenges with recruiting and retaining specialist educators, which was really impacting their ability to take these apprentices on and provide them the training they needed in a timely manner. They partnered with 2 employers to release TAE qualified industry workers from those employers for periods of time to support the teaching of those apprentices on a rotating basis. So really similar to what I was talking about with the model that was happening in one of the European nations. And the comments from Holmesglen were around the need to be able to service that level of student at a short period of time, that level of growth that they saw. They really needed to think outside the box. And by partnering with industry, by leveraging those relationships, we saw, both a significant benefit for Holmesglen in terms of being able to take those apprentices on and put them through the training that they required. We saw a benefit for for industry in the fact that those apprentices were moving through at a pace that industry needed. And again, we saw some really great transfer of skills and transfer of knowledge between industry and the training sector. So really a strong benefit for all. Certainly some challenges that needed to be worked through. Pay disparity and things like that certainly needed to be addressed, but through a partnership approach and working together, they were able to overcome those issues. So really great to see some, I guess, industry and the training sector working together to achieve some great outcomes there. So what do we take from all of that? Hopefully I've given you what is a very quick run through of, some incredibly complex problems, many of which are enduring, and we have already had multiple attempts at and ongoing attempts to resolve some of those challenges. But the core of it, I think, comes down to there is no silver bullet. We need to take a multifaceted approach to resolving these really highly complex problems. We need to make sure that we look for those areas of duplication and try to limit them. We need to make sure that we look at those areas of best practice and look to scale and look to implement more broadly, because there are such wonderful programs and projects and pilots going on that it can have a real impact on some of these challenges that we're facing. But mostly, that collaboration, that coordinated action is key to meeting those energy workforce needs. And that must be bedded in tripartite action across government, across industry, and across the training sector. So that is well and truly enough from me. Over to you. So really keen to hear from your one practical action that RTO's industry or systems partners could take in the next 12 months to strengthen the future energy workforce. If you want to drop some stuff in the chat, please do. I also see that there are some questions coming through which I'll try to answer as you all have a bit of a think through. And if you have any other questions as well, please feel free to drop them in the chat. So David, I can see you've got a really great comment there around the lack of childcare in reses, around public transport infrastructure. A lot of those, community infrastructure barriers that are having an impact on our ability to attract workers to regional areas. And couldn't agree more. There's a really interesting report from the Cradle Coast Authority which looks at the impact of the scope of and scale of work that they've got coming through the pipeline, and the impact that fly in, fly out workers might have on that on the local economy and the local communities, if they were to go that route instead of growing a localized workforce. And some really interesting information coming out of that, even down to the average spend of a FIFO worker versus the average spend of a tourist, and the dynamic between if accommodation is filled with FIFO workers, what does that do to the local community who might not see the same volume of tourist dollars flowing through? So yeah, really, I think really great thing to highlight there, David, that it isn't just about training infrastructure. It isn't just about making sure that that continuing volume of work is there for the workforce. We've also got to make sure that the community infrastructure is in place, and that requires far more collaboration and coordination with local government, and with the jurisdictions and those communities which it's going to impact. And yeah, really great comment from Graham as well around talking about the future needs, but how do we get the apprentices the field experience required to fill the current work available where it does not support that growth now? This includes a variety of work relevant to the different subjects. Yeah, workforce mobility, and I guess when we talk about mobility, we're not only talking about geographical mobility, but mobility across the different subsectors and across those niche areas of work is going to be incredibly important for us. And you're right, it is really hard to get them that wealth of experience. Certainly, group training organisations, as always, are a great opportunity to, to grow the knowledge and skills of the apprentice and to have them experience a range of sectors. And we often see that in larger employers as well, where they have more opportunity to shift and mobilise the workers across different areas of the business and different knowledge areas that they might need. But it absolutely does remain a critical area to be addressed. We know that short training opportunities have a role to play there. I don't want to say micro-credentials, but certainly skill sets are a great opportunity there, as are a range of other training that's available, including from the OEMs. But yeah, that I guess that initial growth of knowledge and skills, particularly on emerging technologies, is certainly a challenge that needs to be faced and needs to be addressed. Part of that, certainly, some great opportunities through partnerships with training organisations and industry, particularly around sharing of technologies. But yeah, again, I guess we go back to that idea of how do we create more in and outflows from industry into the training sector, and vice versa, to make sure that those current skills are being diffused amongst our workforce at a faster rate. Need to know any information regarding the need for upskilling of electrical trades. Is there any more? What type of upskilling is required? Melissa, it's a really great question. What type of upskilling is required? It's really broad, and it's really, I guess, highly based on where the person might be working geographically and the range of projects that are going on in that area. PSO have been advocating for a while now for a continuing professional development framework for the trades, particularly for the licensed trades. And I think this would be a great avenue for, I guess, to create a framework for focused and targeted investment by the government ahead of projects going ahead. So if there was a CPD framework for your electrical trades, you might see that, in northwestern Victoria, there was a large wind farms going in 3 or 4 years' time, and you might be able to sort of target funding for CPD around wind farms in that area for the 3 or 4 years ahead, to make sure you've got the right workforce with the right skills at the right time. But again, I think we don't have that framework in place yet. So that becomes incredibly difficult, and the range of skills, I guess, are so broad, and a lot of the needs, particularly in terms of, again, I guess if we go back to data centers, are really still emerging. What we do know is they're broadly not brand new skills and brand new knowledge which is required. Especially if we use data centers as the example, a lot of the skills that are going to be needed are already existing in industry. When we talk about, gas fire suppression systems, when we talk about liquid cooling and things like that, those technologies are already being implemented in other controlled environments like hospitals and like labs. But it is outsized growth, and we don't really know yet the true volume of that growth in those niche areas that's going to be needed. So difficult to know. Greg, some great comments there about better ways of working with employers to encourage apprentice uptake. This includes barriers to employment, ongoing small businesses, the answer, but always happy to manage apprentices and their business. Yeah, really good point. So a bit of a plug, PSO have a research paper coming out in the near future on apprenticeships and the value proposition for business, and I guess some of the trends that we're starting to see. Keep a bit of an eye out for that. We're hoping it will start a much more significant conversation, because what we're starting to see already is certainly a plateau and even a decline in apprentice commencements in our space, that is certainly going to need to be addressed if we're going to meet these workforce aspirations. Because what we're seeing at the moment is, like I said, potentially decline at a time when we need to see growth the most. Hydraulics and mechanical upskilling, Andrew, related to wind turbine technicians, absolutely. David, we're now getting asked by clients about alternatives to TAFE as a standard quality training. Yeah. David, I think, the private sector in the training side of things is hugely important. And we're seeing some great work across the TAFEs and across the private sector, and certainly in enterprise RTOs as well. We know that there are areas for improvement across all, but again, I think working together will certainly yield us far better results than trying to sort of work in isolation. Perfect. I can see a few other comments in there. I think most of them we've sort of broadly covered. Certainly in terms of Melissa, those areas for specific skill sets, I'd probably go back to the and I'll send it through to you, that slide that sort of showed before, those technologies and the capabilities that sit around it, that really sort of, I guess, identified what we don't yet know is the volume associated with a lot of those different areas. And to be really transparent, I guess a lot of those areas, the volume is changing on a very rapid basis as projects get progress through the feed stage, or they don't progress. So it's very much focused on individual projects and areas of activity and jurisdictions and things like that. So each will have a different profile of upskilling that's required to support that area and the activity that's going on in that area. Perfect. So if you want any further information on a lot of what we've talked about here today, there are some further resources that you can access through those QR codes there. This meeting, the recording of this meeting, will go on our website and will be available for anyone if you'd like to have another look at it. As will these resources be shared on the website as well. So if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out. We're always happy to have a chat. We're always happy to incorporate your insights and your learnings into the work we do as well. The voice of you, our stakeholders, is incredibly important to everything that PSO undertakes. Thank you so much for your time, hugely appreciated. And we look forward to speaking with you all soon. And again, I guess I know I said it before, but if you haven't looked at the full schedule of Ignited events, please have a look through. From here on, they get far more targeted in terms of their content, and there's some really great information and discussions going on. Thank you all.